Studying language is a privilege. When you analyze language in everyday speech, you realize that there is an astonishing amount of wonder in the system that we take for granted. Linguists question the obvious, which is language, and got answers that forever change mankind's understanding of language and human nature. In this video, you will see what linguists know that is not so evident to other people. So let's see what we've got. We all speak one language. One of the main discoveries of modern linguistics is that it made us aware that all the languages we speak are similar in astonishing respects. They manifest the same pattern, follow the same rules, they are learned in the exactly same way, and that all the differences are only superficial. So in a sense, we all speak the same language. This was captured by Chomsky in an excellent metaphor titled Language and Mind, in which he says that if a Martian scientist, somebody with a different kind of intelligence, were to study the world's languages, he would conclude that they are all dialects of a single language embodying a universal grammar reflecting a hardwired, genetically determined linguistic module inherent in the human brain. Studies of topologically different languages show that this is indeed the case. I will mention in passing one of probably the main arguments used to prove this. Take a child that was born in China and have him raised in Saudi Arabia and he'll grow up speaking Arabic. What does that say to you? It says that a human child is hardwired to learn any languages and that all human languages, say Mandarin and Arabic in this case, are fundamentally the same. If they weren't, the task of child to learn any language would be impossible. This has massive implications, the greatest of which is that all the 7,000 human languages have the same source and that every language spoken today evolved from the same great-great-great-grandmother tongue. Another implication is that if a Martian would fly past our planet, he would hear Japanese and Ojibwe like we hear British and American English. This is an interesting line of thought. If you want to read more about it, I got a good book you could read. It's called Chomsky's Universal Grammar, an Introduction. Part 2. Language change is natural. People so often combat language change and are feared by it. Linguists know that natural language change is not bad for a language. Adopting loan words from other languages, losing inflection, cases, genders, articles, and formally distinct sounds, this happens in all languages and is nothing to worry about. For a linguist, it's an interesting phenomenon worth analyzing. For some people, it's proof for the demise of language, the end of civilized culture and the beginning of the dying of the proper language. But languages constantly change, and this is certainly not how languages die. Too many people fear language change. Many people think that if we don't attempt to regulate the correct form of speaking, from spelling to pronunciation to word choice, then we will all plunge into anarchy or some sort of misfortune. It's a sham. Language constantly evolves, and even those political or cultural elites who claim to use it correctly fail to do so themselves. And even those who fancy themselves as guardians of the correct way of speaking can't even agree on whether split infinitives are kosher. Societies arise and fall, but not because too many people started to say ain't when they should have said isn't. Part 3. There are no bad grammars. One of the things you know when you start studying languages is that you realize how stupid is the claim that says there are bad grammars. Linguists know that all dialects, even those considered bad grammar by many people, are as fully formed and rule-bound as any other language. Someone who uses Appalachian dialect or African American vernacular English, to use two United States examples, is not simply ignorant of grammatical rules taught in school or speaking sloppily. They are following a different set of rules, which are consistent within their own dialect. Sometimes the linguistic complexity of languages associated with underprivileged societies, and that we call bad grammars, far exceeds that of modern and privileged societies. William Labov, in fact, analyzed African American vernacular English and showed us that it is a beautiful language with a sophisticated structure and has many features that standard English lacks. You can read more about this Labov's own book titled Language in the Inner City, Studies in the Black English Vernacular. Part 4. There are monolingual linguists. I don't know how to stress this further. Being a linguist does not equal being a polyglot. While it's true that linguists study all languages, this does not mean that they engage in learning them. They only study them to test certain hypotheses related to how languages work. Linguists know that there are monolingual linguists. There are even linguists who advise against learning languages. Seriously, people should stop using linguist and polyglot or language lover synonymously. The surest way to annoy a linguist is to ask, "So how many languages do you speak?" Part 5. Language is fractal. Linguists know that you really can't fully describe any human language. It seems to be impossible to produce enough rules to fully describe any natural language. You always find that there are wild expressions that your rules forbid and invalid expressions that your rules permit. That's what we mean when we say all grammars leak. Of course, you can create new rules to cover those exceptions. But teams have spent decades at this without closing all the holes, despite creating tens of thousands of rules. This is one reason linguists have trouble taking grammar perspectivists seriously. We know that no description of grammar small enough to fit in a single volume can be anything more than a set of guidelines. Part 6. Monoglots can become polyglots. Linguists know that everybody who speaks one language can learn others if they want to. The mathematics behind linguistics, for example automata theory and Chomsky's hierarchy of languages, indicate that an astonishing amount of intelligence is required to become a monoglot. The more we study computational linguistics, the automata theory, the more we understand this. The simplest theoretical machine that could accurately parse a human language and map to meanings would be incredibly complex. Surprisingly, the amount of complexity one must add in order to parse a second language is almost negligible. In other words, there is no real difference in the intelligence necessary to become a monoglot or a polyglot. Perceived differences in difficulty have more to do with learning as an adult versus as a child during the critical period, and with the enjoyment of learning and willingness to work. I'm sure linguists know so much more that can be said in the video. Linguists changed our perceptions about language, changed the way we regard minority languages, and most importantly, linguists made us aware that no language is inferior. Join the bandwagon to recognize the efforts of linguists by subscribing to this channel and sharing this video. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'll see you soon.